Welcome to the Explainer. We've all seen them, right? Companies making these huge promises about being better for the environment, for society, their whole ESG game. But how do you know if it's real or just for show? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on that. Yeah, that word greenwashing gets thrown around a lot. And it comes from that feeling we all get sometimes. That little voice in your head wondering if a company's big, splashy sustainability report is more about PR than actual change. It's a really good question. But the answer? Well, it's not in the promise itself. It's in what comes after.
Because honestly, anyone can make a promise. The real test, the thing that actually matters, is what happens after that promise is made. It all boils down to the enforcement machine. The gears and levers in the background that are supposed to make sure these promises are actually kept.
And to get our heads around enforcement, we have to start with this one big idea. Think of countries as having different legal operating systems, kind of like Mac versus PC. You can run the same program, the same rule, on both, but it's going to look and feel completely different depending on the system it's in. And this brings us to two totally different legal worlds. You've got your common law systems, like what you see in Singapore. They're more flexible, they're built on the decisions judges have made in the past. It's very pragmatic. Then you've got civil law systems, like in Thailand. These are super structured, almost like a detailed instruction manual written by the government. And believe me, these aren't just small details. They change everything about how a rule actually gets enforced. So, if we really want to get what's going on, we have to look past the words written on the page. We have to decode the system itself, how it's built, how it thinks, and especially how it reacts when you drop a new rule into it. Which leads to this really simple but kind of profound question. In a world that's so connected, can you just take a law that works great in one country and, copy-paste it into another? This whole idea is what experts call a legal transplant. But here's the catch. As the legal scholar Gunther Tubner pointed out, these transplanted rules can act like legal irritants. So instead of fitting in smoothly, they can poke and prod the new legal system, causing all sorts of unexpected reactions. It's less like copy-pasting and more like introducing a foreign species into a new ecosystem. You just don't know what's going to happen. So how on earth do we figure this all out? Well, what we need is a tool. Think about like a decoder ring that lets us look at any country, any rule, and see how the enforcement machine really works. We're going to call it the accountability channel. It lets us see the guts of the system. Okay, so this framework, this decoder ring, it breaks down any enforcement machine into 4 absolutely crucial parts. And by looking at each one, we can figure out why some rules have real teeth, while others are, frankly, all bark and no bite. So let's see what they are. Let's pop the hood on this machine. First up, you've got the legal vehicle. Where does the rule actually come from? Is it a law passed by the government or a rule made by the stock exchange? Next, who is the enforcing actor? Who's the cop on the beat? A government agency? A court? Then there's the enforcement pathway. How do they actually go about it? Is it a quick, behind-the-scenes administrative action, or is it a long, drawn-out court battle? And finally, the big one, available sanctions. What are the consequences for breaking the rule? A slap on the wrist, or a massive penalty that really makes people sit up and take notice? And here's the cool part. You put those 4 elements together, and they determine how credible, how real any rule is. And it comes down to 3 things. Tempo. How fast does it happen? Visibility. Does everyone see it happen? And my personal favorite, remedial bite. How much does it hurt when you get caught? All right, enough theory. Let's put this tool to work. We're going to take our examples, Singapore and Thailand, who both adopted pretty similar global ESG standards. But as you're about to see, they plugged those standards into 2 completely different enforcement machines. Okay, just look at this table. The difference is night and day. In Singapore, the ESG rule is part of the stock exchange's listing rules, so it's enforced by the exchange's own regulator. The process is fast, administrative, and the real punishment? It's your reputation taking a hit in the market. But in Thailand, that same idea is a formal government law. It's enforced by the SEC and the courts. It's a much more formal process, and the consequences can be fines or even criminal charges. See? Same goal, totally different machines. So what does all this mean for the big picture, for trying to solve global problems? Well, as we push for more global standards, understanding these local differences, it's not just some interesting academic exercise. It's everything. It's the key to making any of this actually work. So, if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The rules on the books are only half the story. You can write the most beautiful, perfect rule in the world, but its real impact, its actual power, comes from the local enforcement architecture it gets plugged into. The written law is just the first chapter. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. If the rules of the game are becoming global, but enforcement, the referee, is always local, what does that really mean for our shared future? If we're all trying to solve these huge problems together, but every country is playing on a fundamentally different field, how do we ever expect to win?